Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to part 4 of the journey. For those who didn't see the first 3, I'll put the links down below. But basically, I produced a track for a young artist that I'm developing. And I just basically wanted to share the journey of how I produce music and kind of drop some information that I've learned as a career in my career of audio engineering. And maybe I can help you learn something new. But basically, the first process was the creative process where you come up with the musical idea. The second process was the mixing process, and the recording process. The third process is the after you record it is the mixing process, and then the final process is the mastering and the final publication of whatever medium you're going to produce a final track on: USB, MP3, CD, or whatever. But basically, so far, I showed in the previous videos what I've done. And to share with you what I have done is it's this. I shared how I organized my tracks, and I shared how I mixed everything. And I'm basically done. So I'm about to bounce everything out of Logic so that I can go ahead and master it. Now, mastering is simply put, mastering is basically putting the final touches on the song. Final touches meaning applying any type of correction that needs to happen, such as, let's say you have some of the levels discrepancy throughout the song. You know, some parts are quieter than others, or let's say you the overall volume of the song isn't loud enough for industry standard, or let's say you want to add a little bit more articulation to the overall audio spectrum. So you want to add some EQ so you can bring the highs up and make it crispy where you need it to be, so you can hear the cymbals and hear the articulation of the vocals, or a combination of all those things. And mastering also has to do with making sure that you output the digital file in whatever format the publishing house needs. If you're going to do an LP on wax, if you're going to do something, an MP3 file, or if you're going to stream it, you know, streaming platforms have very specific codecs, very specific parameters that their files have to meet in order to ensure that all the songs are of the best quality and consistent across all the songs that are played on their particular platform. So that's another thing that mastering does. And so what I'm about to do is I'm about to master the instrumental version of this track. And so I figured I'd ask if you join me with this journey. All right, let's get started. Okay, so here is the track. I'll play a little bit for you. So it's kind of a upbeat, you know, dance track, hype track, if you will. And so that's basically the gist of the track. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to export it from Logic or whatever DAW you happen to be using at the time. In my case, I use Logic Pro. And as you can see on my master output here, I have a template called Broadcast Ready, and it has EQ, a multi-channel compressor on an exciter, and a adaptive limiter, excuse me, on there, so that it can create a very clean sound and have it at a very good volume. And I'm at about I'm peaking at minus 4 dB. And that's important because I want to be able to export this with enough headroom, meaning enough volume space before clipping, enough headroom so that when I go into master it, I have space to increase volume even more, because I might want to bring lower frequencies up in volume. And of course, that's going to raise the overall volume as well. So, yeah. And as you see here, I do have the auto room correction software. That's for the room that I mix in. And I'm definitely turning that off because I only use that when I'm playing that over my speakers. And so whenever you bounce something out, you want to take that corrective EQ off of there, or that corrective room EQ off of there. Okay, so let's go out here. Make sure the max. Yep. So these are your left and right. That's basically going to be the size of the track. You know, it's going to start here on the downbeat and end over here. And I'm good to go. A little word to the wise is that you want to make sure that you don't have any track selected when you bounce, because by selecting a track and bouncing, it might only select that particular audio track or that particular region, and you think you're bouncing all the regions and you're not. And then when you get the final product, you're like, what happened? I found that out the hard way. But hey, that's one of the good things about mistakes. It's the best learning tool there is. All right. All right. So I'm going to bounce. That brings up this window. And I'm going to bounce a pulse code modulated file, which is basically a non-compressed file. And I want to start at the downbeat of 1, beat 1, measure 1, frame 1, tick 1, all the way to the last beat, which is 166. It's going to bounce in offline, meaning that I don't have to play the song in real time in order to export it. It's going to do it fast, and it's going to do it in the background. I want to include the audio tail so that if I have any reverb or anything that's happening, that it records that information as well. And I want to include the tempo information. And there's also normalization. Normalization basically takes the low parts and brings it up in volume, takes the high parts, brings it down. Basically, it makes sure that the average volume is linear. And here, it's the file format is a WAV file, 24 bits long, and it's going to be sampled at 44.1 kilohertz per second. Now this right here, it all depends on what you're using it for. If you're going to export this and go right into CD, yeah, 44.1 is fine. But I'm going to master it, so I'm going to want, and if you're using film, you want to export at 48 frames per second, because film is recorded using audio in 48 frames per second. So I think I could go as far as 96. Basically, these numbers are the resolution, or how detailed your audio file is going to be. And I'm going to leave it at 44.1. It's pretty good because the audio in here is all digital. I'm not recording external audio, so it's digitally based. So there's no noise in it. Let's see, everything's fine. Don't want any dithering. Dithering is used basically if the original file, let's say the original file was 44.1 kilohertz. It was sampled at 44.1, and I decided to downsample it. I wanted 16-bit. Or if I wanted to upsample it to 48 or 64, there's going to be gaps. And so dithering basically uses a mathematical algorithm, and it stuffs those gaps with information, averaged information, so that the computer can recreate the sound to its truest form. So dithering is kind of like glue if you're changing the resolution of the original file to a new resolution. But because I've started out in this 2441 and I'm not changing it, I don't need to dither. All right. So once I set the parameters, now I set a location. And I'll go. Let's see. Forgot to find. Oh, here it is, right here, right there. And I label it pre-mastered, so I know the distinction between before I mastered it and after I mastered it, so I can A and B compare them. And I bounce. And you see how it's doing this a lot faster than if you were playing it in actual real time. And then it's going to normalize it after it finishes exporting it. And that's it. And then I'll hide this. And then here's the file right here. I'll play it. All right. So I just verify that it could play all the way through. I mean, that the file bounced. Go into Logic, shut it down. All right, now I open my mastering software. There's a lot of mastering software out there. Some people even master in Fruity Loops. Basically, the function is the same. It's those things that I described before: corrective EQ, making sure the levels are correct, converting it to this correct file format or whatever codec. Not codec, but whatever file format that needs to be for whatever streaming platform you need it for. Adding some EQ, compression, getting the levels consistent across the board. Whatever tool you can use to accomplish those things, those are the tools that you use to master. For me, what I use is I use a software program called Ozone. And it is right here. It's by a company called iZotope. And it's Ozone version 7. So what I do is, it's pretty simple as far as what I'm going to do right now. It has basically a lot of tools available to it. It has EQ, right? It has dynamics, such as compression, in other words, adjusting and controlling volume levels or controlling energy. And this is a maximizer. They call it a maximizer, but it's really an adaptive limiter. And what that does is it makes sure that you get the most volume as possible without distorting, because nowadays music that is played is very loud. You can also add other modules if you want it, such as, different types of EQ. You can make it sound like tape. You can excite certain frequencies to make things crispy. Dynamic EQ, which you select certain frequencies, and when the frequencies appear, it does something to it. When the frequencies aren't there, it doesn't do anything. Vintage compressor, which basically takes a signal and re-inputs it. Sideband imager, make sure that your stereo image is correct. And it's awesome, the things that this stuff has. But I'm just going to use these 3 things. Now, what I do is I typically use this preset right here. Nothing's wrong with presets, but basically I found that CD master for the longest time, from when they were introduced in the late 80s all the way to the early 2000s, CDs were the standard. And they've had the best support and longevity and control. So I use the CD master preset. And as you can see, when you click on this, what happened was it adjusts the EQ. It set the dynamics, you know, and you got your maximizer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import or add the stereo bounce that I just bounced out. Called pre-mastered. And there you have it. Now the good news is that you see consistent volume levels, meaning the size, this width of the waveform is basically amplitude, and you see things that are consistent, so it's consistent across here. But in this black area, it's not pushed all the way up. Nowadays, the waveform almost looks totally like this space is almost totally filled, you know, because this represents energy. So, you know, energy and volume. So we want to get this as filled as possible. This band right here basically shows different categories of energy. So at this section, there's a certain energy. This section is a different energy, and then it changes here, and then it uses the same color code here because this section right here matches this energy, which makes sense because this is the pre-chorus right here. I mean, this is the pre-chorus and the chorus, and I use the same parts of the music for that. Then you got verse A, right? The first part of the verse and the second half of the verse, which is the same thing. And then it repeats again. So that just gives you a visual identifier of the portions of the song. So what we do is I typically go in here and I make the maximum threshold at -6. And what you do is you select the particular bandwidth of EQ. So right now, this is the mid band. These are highs, mids, and lows. And you can go in here and you can control the energy of those particular bands. You can even determine how far those bands span. I mean, this video isn't going to be a video on how to use the software, but I'm just getting you into my headspace. So right now I'm going to play the track from here and listen to it. So this is telling me right now. You've got, this is your peak information right here, right? It's your peak information. And this right here is your average information. So right now I'm peaking at about, I'm averaging at like -3 to 5 dB. And the hottest peak was 0.1. So I want to bring this up even further. I should be at like minus 2 dB I'm trying to get to. See here, I'm over by 2.9 dB. So I'm peaking at 0.7 and those about -5. See, and I'm capping it at 0.7 as far as the ceiling. See, 0.7. So that means that signal has gone beyond here, and therefore the limiter had to kick in to bring it back down. When I hit bypass, it goes past this point, and that's when you get the red. So the idea is to control it to get the volume without distorting or losing clarity. All right, I think I'm ready. So now from here, I will bounce it out. Now you can save this setting just like any digital audio workstation, like any DAW. So I'm going to file and I'm going to save this. So if I ever need to go back and tweak it, you know, when I play this track in my car or play it at a club and I need to make some adjustments, I can just open up the project and pick up from where I left off. So now that I have the project saved, I'm going to export the audio file. And it's going to be, instead of the pre-mastered, I'm going to call it mastered. Now remember, the original file was 24-bit. So I want to keep it there. And it does it also in the background. You don't have to do it in real time. And now I will play the comparison. All right, so here's the pre-master version. I mean, it doesn't sound bad. All right, so here's the mastered version. You see how the energy is higher, and I also rolled off some of the sub bass so it wouldn't distort. Because if I kept the sub bass in, the louder it goes, those are such large frequencies that it'll distort, and I want that bass sound tighter. So on this one, the little the little melody piece is kind of in the background, and through mastering, I was able to push it forward so you could hear it better. So on this one, on the original pre-master, the piano is actually louder than anything else. But I was able to push it back with the other instruments just a touch. Well, not pushed it back, but I brought the other supporting instruments up. You can hear the growl of the synthesizer better. I love this breakdown, boy. I'm already seeing the video. Well, that's basically my track from start to finish. Thank you for following along the journey. I just wanted to help anybody out there that was interested in learning new things and how to produce music. But remember, the key is to know what you want to do. Know your destination. If you want to make a hot club banger, go out to the club, listen to some hot tracks out there, and just figure out what's happening out there for that particular track. The bass drums are tight, the snares are cracking, and the cymbals, they're crispy, the vocals are out front, and they're articulate. So take that information, bring it back to your studio, and replicate it. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me once again. You take care. All right.